Time to bring in our Monday afternoon panel of political strategist Grahame Morris here with me in Canberra, Bruce Hawker in the Sky News Centre. Welcome to you both. I just want to touch on what we were just reporting before the break. The Administrative Court in Jakarta has ruled that Andrew Chan can't have the President's decision to deny him clemency appealed. We're yet to hear the outcome for Myuran Sukumaran. But Grahame, just before we get on to domestic political matters, this isn't a great surprise, this outcome.
No, he don't, and I'm probably, not the best bloke to ask, but look, you feel dreadfully sorry for the family of these fellas. But they sort of knew what they were doing. They knew the risk. And I'm just a great believer in, when you're in other people's countries, you abide by the law. Look, it seems to me the lawyers at least tried, a really left field sort of appeal. But, common sense would tell you that the President is almost in this case above the law. The law had finished. Yeah. And it's whether or not the President is in a really good mood. But remember, this fellow has just run an election promising to be strong against drug dealers. And this is the first test. Just seemed to me he was unlikely ever to walk away and grant clemency on a case like this.
And Bruce, we were just having a very interesting conversation with Ross Tapsell over there in Jakarta about the political situation Joko Widodo's in. He's copping it for not being tough enough on police corruption. So this anti-drugs crusade, I suppose, is a way of countering that and showing that he really is a tough guy.
Indeed, and the politics of this doesn't look at all good for Chan or Sukumaran. It's hard to see that the President is going to change his position on any of this. If he did do that, then he would come under intense pressure within Indonesia itself for presumably presenting some sort of preferential treatment to foreign drug dealers, even though there's plenty of precedent there for drug dealers and others who are Indonesians to be granted clemency. So I just don't see it happening. That's the grim reality of, I think, what we're seeing now.
I think, yeah. Let's talk about what's happening domestically. We're leading up to the budget number 2 for Joe Hockey and Tony Abbott, and the government, Grahame, now looking at retirement incomes, pensions and superannuation, and obviously trying to go for something that's fairer than last year's attempt, which has so far failed on the pension change anyway. But it's still not going to be politically easy necessarily, is it? This is a bit of a minefield.
Talking of grim. Well, it's right. Look, the coalition's voting strength is 55 plus. And, if you lose, if say 2% of the 55 plus people walk away from what the government was doing on pensions or super, that's about 5 or 6% of the coalition's vote. This is really, really serious stuff politically. You would hope in this country that we can, for 12 months at least, have a proper debate, proper discussion as to what ought to we be doing with superannuation, what ought we doing with pensions and stuff. But look, I can tell you, pretty well everyone from 50 plus has had a look at this in the last 2 weeks and is uneasy. And I can remember I ran a campaign for Andrew Peacock in 1984 on the assets test. And damn near locked off Bob Hawke at his peak. And it's not just the elderly who get concerned. In this case, it's the sort of retirees and the elderly. But then you get their sort of, they're the baby boomers.
Well, anyone
then you get the next generation who think, oh, hang on, I'm going to miss out on some money here from mum or dad, or mum and dad. And the grandkids say, why are they picking on grandma? It's quite tricky, this.
And how much should I be putting into super? Are they going to knock it off when I get there? All of that. Bruce, what do you think? And specifically about tightening up the assets test for part pensioners and taxing the wealthier retirees' superannuation?
Well, I think that there are people at the very top who I think they could be, going after in a way or reducing the benefits. I mean, there was a stat came out the other day published in The Australian where I think 24,000 of Australia's wealthiest superannuants with more than $2 million in the bank, we're receiving $5.2 billion in public money every year. So that doesn't sound to me to be like a very fair arrangement. I mean, if you've got $2 million or more in your superannuation, then you're going to be on $100,000 or more a year anyway.
Well, the point Nick Xenophon was making to us earlier was $2 million for a single, $3 million for a couple is about enough. After that, do you really need taxpayer help in building a retirement nest egg?
Well, I think the answer is no. Really, I mean, if you already own your own home, and you're getting that and you've got that sort of annual income, you know, and probably in excess of $150,000 when you combine the two superannuation incomes, then how many people out there, you know, on Struggle Street, as Alan Jones likes to describe, are on that sort of money anyway, ever will be on that sort of money when they're working 40 hours a week? So some of this, I think, is able to be dealt with. I mean, common sense has to kick in here, and you have to say, well, what is the purpose? Why would we be giving this sort of assistance to people who already can do so well on their own?
Yeah,
it becomes a much harder issue, of course, for pensioners, but, you know, people in that sort of income, no.
Do you think that's a reasonable benchmark? I'd be pretty happy with $2 or $3 million in the super account.
I think it is a decent benchmark. If Bruce and his mates had promised to give bipartisan support, not make an issue of anything like this, fine. But it's the people underneath that get uneasy. They think, oh,
is this a slippery slope?
Am I next? Why are they doing this? And, you know, we've also got a few commitments there that you won't change super and whatnot, so it's a little way off.
Yeah. More broadly, this budget, do you reckon it's safe to say that this is going to be more like a pre-election budget, certainly than last year's?
No, I don't, David, because there's not enough money. You know, a pre-election budget, you normally give tax cuts, you give people back their money, and you have some nice sweeteners. There's just not enough money around.
But it's going to be very different.
But it is sort of going to be slightly unusual, because to get the electorate to forget the last budget, and to get the backbench to forget the last budget, it has to be at least a benign budget, and preferably a tick, which is why I'm not quite sure. There's probably a good reason. I don't know what it is, but I'm not quite sure why you take the family package out of the budget, because with it in there, you just might get the headlines, hey, good family budget.
Well, that's true. Bruce, does it make it harder, though, for Labor to basically score points off the budget if it is a much kinder and gentler document?
Yeah, I think that goes without saying. But of course, then it opens the government up to the allegation that they've been talking about a budget emergency here, and now they're able to produce a budget which they say in a few years' time is going to be in surplus briefly, and then or close to surplus, and then it'll taper off for about 40 years of deficit. So, you know, we've seen a complete change in the sell from Tony Abbott on this issue, and I think he will probably get some support from the electorate, because it doesn't. It's nowhere near as aggressive, and they are trying to open up a debate anyway around, you know, pension, superannuation, income tax, and how they all interrelate. And I don't think that's such a bad thing. I think it's also the year in which Bill Shorten needs to come out and you know, make some pretty strong statements about what he is for and as against what he's against. And you know, I don't mean that as a critique of him. I think this is the year he needs to do it, because it could well be that we won't see Tony Abbott around, you know, at the next election. I think that's much more likely than not. I mean, he's very unpopular around the country. The latest news poll shows that Shorten's more popular than him. This is a chance for Shorten to really come out and do something that says, I'm the alternative Prime Minister.
Well, that's a debate no doubt we will continue in the weeks and months ahead. Bruce, Hawker, Grahame Morris, good to talk to both of you. Thank you very much for that, particularly coming in on an Easter Monday. Very good of you. We'll take a quick break, back with more on PM Agenda.